Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a topic that's, well, absolutely central to our present and future. Renewable energy.
Often called green energy, yeah.
Exactly. Think of it as tapping into power from nature's resources. Things that replenish themselves within a human lifespan, basically.
Right.
For anyone wanting to get a solid grasp on a vital subject, without getting bogged down, you're definitely in the right place.
For sure. We've sifted through a wealth of information, including a pretty comprehensive overview, to bring you the core insights.
What it is, why it's so critical.
The main types, its remarkable growth, and, yeah, some of the interesting challenges and ongoing discussions, too.
The goal is to give you that aha moment, right? Make complex stuff accessible.
That's the plan.
So our mission today is to really get under the hood of renewable energy, beyond the buzzwords, understand its fundamental nature, why it's so important now, the key tech, how fast things are changing.
And some of the maybe surprising debates and obstacles.
Okay, let's dive in. When we say renewable energy, what's the core idea there?
Okay. At its heart, it's about using resources that nature refills faster than we use them up. Simple as that, really.
Like the sun keeps shining, the wind keeps blowing?
Precisely. The International Energy Agency puts it as energy derived from natural processes that are replenished at a faster rate than they are consumed.
Gotcha.
And the ones most people know are, solar, wind, and hydropower. But bioenergy and geothermal, they also play pretty significant roles in some places.
So it's not just about electricity for our lights and gadgets, is it? Where else does it fit in?
Oh, good question. No, it's much broader. Renewables are making headway in four main areas where we've historically leaned heavily on fossil fuels.
Okay.
First, the obvious one, generating electricity. Solar and wind are really leading the charge there.
Yeah.
Big time.
Right.
Second is heating and cooling. Our buildings, our water.
Ah, see.
Third is transportation. Think electric vehicles, biofuels are gaining traction too.
EVs, definitely.
And finally, and this is crucial, providing power in rural, off-grid areas. Places not connected to the main power lines.
Makes sense. No, I've heard it's not always quite so simple. Like, is renewable automatically low carbon and sustainable? Always.
That's a really, really important distinction to make. Just because it's renewable doesn't automatically mean low carbon.
Okay, example.
Take biomass, burning wood, right? That releases CO2. Now, it can be less than burning fossil fuels, but...
Yep.
And this is the key part. If that wood comes from, say, cutting down old growth forests, or if land is cleared unsustainably for palm oil to make biodiesel,
then it's not really sustainable in the long run.
Exactly, even though wood itself grows back. So renewable isn't always sustainable. Sustainable energy really has to consider the impact, down the line for future generations.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. Understood. So let's get to the main driver. Why the massive push for renewables now?
The overwhelming reason, climate change. It's simple, really.
Right.
Burning fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases. That's what's warming the planet.
And renewables generally don't, or release far less.
Far, far less. Most countries globally have now committed to getting to net zero emissions, and you just can't do that without fundamentally moving away from fossil fuels towards cleaner options.
And there feels like real momentum, doesn't it? You hear about these international agreements, targets.
Absolutely. COP28, the recent climate conference, a huge number of nations agreed to try and triple global renewable energy capacity by 2030.
Triple? Wow.
Yeah. And the EU, for instance, they've set a target of 40% of their electricity from renewables by that same year. It really signals a strong worldwide commitment. Things are moving.
Okay, so climate change is number one. Are there other benefits, other reasons to switch?
Definitely. Quite a few, actually. One big one is how resources are distributed. Renewable sources, sun, wind, they're spread much more evenly across the globe compared to fossil fuels, which are, concentrated in certain spots.
So more energy independence for more countries.
Potentially, yes. Greater energy security, and then there are the health benefits. Huge ones.
From less pollution.
Exactly. Cutting down on burning fossil fuels means drastically cutting air pollution. The IEA estimates that could save trillions of dollars globally every year in healthcare costs alone. Plus, they tend to be quieter in operation than, say, a big coal plant.
Trillions.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's tackle a big challenge. Intermittency, the sun goes down, the wind stops blowing. How do we deal with that?
You've hit the nail on the head. That's a core challenge, especially for solar and wind. They are, by nature, variable.
Unlike turning a gas plant on or off.
Right. Fossil fuels, nuclear, even big hydro dams, they're generally dispatchable. We can ramp them up or down when needed. Solar only works in daylight, wind depends on the weather.
So that mismatch between when energy is made and when we need it, that's the issue for the grid.
That's the crux of it. It makes managing the electricity grid much trickier and, yeah, potentially could lead to power outages if not handled well.
So what are we doing about it? Just hoping for good weather?
No, definitely not. There are several strategies, short-term and long-term. In the short to medium term, grid operators might need to keep some, say, natural gas plants on standby, ready to fire up quickly if solar or wind generation drops unexpectedly.
A backup, basically.
Kind of. But the real long-term answers lie in energy storage.
Batteries.
Batteries are becoming huge, yes, both grid scale and even in homes, but also pumped storage hydro. That's actually the most common large-scale storage right now.
Pumped hydro, how does that work?
You use excess electricity, maybe from solar during the day, to pump water uphill into a reservoir. Then, when you need the power, you let the water flow back down through turbines, generating electricity.
Clever, like a giant water battery.
Pretty much. And then there's green hydrogen. That's being looked at very closely for longer-term storage.
Green hydrogen. That sounds like it could really help bridge those longer gaps, like maybe a few cloudy, windless days.
It definitely has that potential. The idea is you use surplus renewable electricity, say, from wind farms on a really windy night to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. That's electrolysis. Then you can store that hydrogen maybe in tanks or underground caverns and use it later. Either burn it in a turbine to generate electricity, use it in fuel cells, or even use it directly in some industries.
So storage is key. What else?
Well, diversification helps a lot. Having a mix of different renewables, solar, wind, hydro, maybe some geothermal, tends to smooth out the overall supply because they often peak at different times.
Makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And then there are smart grids, using digital tech to better manage energy flows, predict demand, and integrate all these different sources more effectively.
And sector coupling, I've heard that term.
Yeah, that's about linking the electricity sector with other energy-using sectors, like coordinating electric vehicle charging for when power is plentiful and cheap, or using renewable electricity to produce hydrogen for industry, or using excess power for thermal storage in buildings. It adds flexibility.
So it's about making the whole system smarter and more interconnected.
Precisely. And in some cases, we might even need to build more solar and wind capacity than our average demand requires.
Overcapacity. Why?
So that even on less than ideal days, we still generate enough. It means sometimes, on really sunny, windy days, we might have to deliberately curtail or turn down some generation because there's just too much power. But that extra capacity provides a buffer.
Okay, that's a lot of solutions in the works.
Right.
What about keeping the supply chain secure? Are there new vulnerabilities with renewables?
Yeah, that's another important angle. It's different from fossil fuels, where you worry about pipelines or tanker routes. With renewables, the concerns shift.
How so?
Well, take solar PV. A huge chunk of the global manufacturing, the panels, the components, is currently concentrated in one country, China.
Ah. So a supply chain risk there.
Potentially, yeah. If there were disruptions, it could impact deployment globally. And then there's cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity for solar panels.
For the whole system, think about it. Wind farms, solar inverters, grid controls, they're all increasingly connected and digitally managed.
Right, so they could be hacked.
It's a concern. An attack could potentially disrupt generation, maybe even cause instability on the grid. That's why regulations, like the EU's NIS2 directive, are being brought in to beef up cybersecurity for the energy sector.
Okay, really important considerations. Let's zoom in now on the main technologies. Solar, that seems to be everywhere now.
Solar has just exploded, especially since around 2010. It's incredible. A really significant chunk of our electricity globally is coming from the sun now.
And the beauty is you can basically put it anywhere the sun shines, right?
Pretty much. Of course, the amount you get varies a lot with weather, time of day, location, but the potential is vast.
And there are different ways to actually capture that sunlight.
Right. Two main paths: solar, thermal, and photovoltaics, or PV.
Thermal for heat, PV for electricity.
You got it. Solar thermal uses sunlight to create heat, maybe for hot water, or sometimes even to drive a turbine for electricity. PV converts sunlight directly into electricity using semiconductor materials.
And PV is the one we see most often.
By far. It dominates. Roughly 2/3 of the world's solar capacity is PV, and it's growing much, much faster than solar thermal. The costs have just plummeted.
Those rooftop panels, the big solar farms, that's PV.
Yep, that's PV. It works on the photoelectric effect, basically. Sunlight hits the panel, knocks electrons loose, and creates an electric current. It's fascinating science, really.
And the advantages.
Yeah.
Cheap, low maintenance.
Exactly. Relatively cheap now, very low maintenance, and super scalable. You can have a tiny panel on a calculator or a massive utility-scale farm. The main downside, clouds. Output drops significantly when it's overcast.
Makes sense. What about solar thermal then? Is it still used?
It is, yeah. Often uses mirrors or lenses to concentrate sunlight onto a receiver, heating up a fluid, usually water or sometimes molten salt.
For hot water, you said.
Primarily for hot water systems in buildings, yes. You can use it to generate electricity by making steam to spin a turbine, like in those big concentrated solar power CSP plants you sometimes see with fields of mirrors.
Right, I've seen pictures.
But generating electricity that way is generally still more expensive than PV, so it's less common now for pure electricity generation. One big advantage, though, is that you can often store the heat, using molten salt tanks, for example. That allows generation even after the sun goes down.
Built-in storage. Interesting. I've also heard terms like photovoltaics and agrivoltaics. Quick explanation.
Sure. Photovoltaics, pretty much what it sounds like. Solar panels floating on water.
Lakes, reservoirs.
Yep. Can actually boost efficiency slightly because the water cools the panels. Plus, it saves land. Manufacturing might be a bit pricier, though.
And agrivoltaics. Agriculture and solar together.
Exactly. Using the same land for both solar panels, often raised higher off the ground, and farming underneath.
Best of both worlds.
Potentially. Better land use, dual income for farmers. The shade can even benefit certain crops, especially in hot climates. You need shade-tolerant plants, of course. It's a really neat idea.
Very cool. Okay, let's switch gears to wind power, another one with a long history.
Oh, absolutely. Millennia, sailing ships, windmills for grinding grain, pumping water.
But now it's mostly giant turbines making electricity.
Almost entirely, yes. Modern wind turbines generating electricity, they come in various sizes, but the key thing is power output is super sensitive to wind speed. It increases with the cube of the wind speed.
The cube. So a small increase in wind speed means a lot more power.
A lot more. That's why location is everything. You want places with strong, consistent winds. High-altitude sites, open plains, and especially offshore.
Offshore wind seems like the next big thing. Why the focus there?
Well, winds over the sea tend to be significantly stronger and much more consistent than over land. On average, maybe 90% stronger.
Wow.
So the potential for energy generation is just huge. Globally, the technical potential for wind, especially including offshore, is massive, many times our current energy use.
Is it catching up to onshore wind?
Onshore still has the largest installed capacity overall, but investment in offshore is growing really fast. It's a major focus now.
Okay, let's talk hydropower, also a classic renewable, right?
Yep. Very mature technology, and incredibly efficient, converts about 90% of the water's energy into electricity. That's really high.
Better than most others.
Among the best, yeah. And it comes in different flavors. You've got the huge dams with big reservoirs, think Three Gorges in China or Itaipu on the Brazil-Paraguay border. Still really important, especially in developing nations.
And smaller ones.
Right. Small hydro on smaller rivers. And run-of-river plants, like the Chief Joseph Dam here in the U.S., they generate power from the river's natural flow, usually without needing a large dam and reservoir.
And hydro is flexible, right? You can adjust the flow.
Very flexible. That makes it a fantastic partner for solar and wind. When the sun isn't shining or the wind drops, hydro can often ramp up to fill the gap.
Sounds ideal. Any downsides?
Oh, yes. Big ones, especially for new large dams. They often face huge opposition. Environmental impacts, flooding land, disrupting river ecosystems, social impacts, displacing communities, losing agricultural land. Plus, they're incredibly expensive and take a very long time to plan and build, navigating permits and environmental reviews.
So are we building many new large dams?
Fewer large ones now, especially in developed countries. The trend is more towards upgrading existing dams, making them more efficient, adding turbines, and importantly, adding pump storage capability where it makes sense. That helps integrate those variable renewables.
Okay, let's move to bioenergy, using organic stuff for fuel.
Exactly. Bioenergy comes from biomass, basically any material from living or recently living organisms, plants mostly.
Like wood.
Wood is the biggest source, yeah. You can burn biomass directly for heat or convert it into biofuels like ethanol or biodiesel.
Is it carbon neutral? because plants absorb CO2.
That's the idea, but it's complicated. Burning it does release CO2, while it's generally less than fossil fuels over the life cycle if it's sourced sustainably. That if is crucial.
The sustainability issue again, like with deforestation.
Precisely. If forests are cleared unsustainably, or if land needed for food is used for fuel crops like palm oil for biodiesel, then it's a major environmental problem. So the sustainability really hinges on how and where the biomass comes from.
Got it. And biofuels mainly for cars and trucks?
Primarily transportation, yes. Bioethanol, often from corn in the U.S. or sugarcane in Brazil. Biodiesel from vegetable oils like rapeseed or palm oil, or even used cooking oil.
Is that a big part of transport fuel now?
Still relatively small overall, but growing. And there's a lot of research into advanced biofuels.
Like what?
Things like cellulosic ethanol, made from non-food plant parts like wood chips or switchgrass, sweet sorghum, even using methane captured from cow manure. And algae fuels, algae grow super fast and don't need farmland.
Algae fuel. Interesting.
Yeah, lots of potential there, though costs are still a hurdle. And biojet fuel is being looked at seriously for aviation to cut emissions from planes.
Okay, last of the main ones. Geothermal. Heat from the earth. Sounds amazing.
It really is. Tapping into the heat deep within the Earth's crust. It comes from radioactive decay of minerals and leftover heat from the planet's formation.
Where does it work best?
It's most viable economically near tectonic plate boundaries. Places like Iceland, parts of the U.S. West, Indonesia, the Philippines, that's where the heat is closer to the surface. The U.S. actually has the largest installed capacity, though it's still a small part of the total energy mix.
How do you use the heat?
Two main ways. Direct use piping the hot water or steam directly for heating buildings or industrial processes. Iceland does a lot of this. Or use the steam to drive turbines and generate electricity.
And heat pumps. Are those geothermal?
Geothermal heat pumps work on a smaller scale for individual buildings. They use the stable temperature of the ground just below the surface for very efficient heating and cooling. Different principle than deep geothermal power plants, but still uses Earth's thermal properties.
What about getting geothermal heat anywhere? Is that possible?
That's the promise of enhanced geothermal systems, or EGS. It's a newer approach.
Enhanced.
It involves drilling deep, sometimes miles down, into hot rock that isn't naturally permeable. Then you carefully fracture the rock, similar tech to fracking for oil and gas, actually, and circulate water through those fractures to pick up the heat.
So you create your own geothermal reservoir, basically.
Exactly. In theory, EGS could unlock geothermal potential almost anywhere in the world, not just on tectonic plate edges. It's still developing, but it could be a real game changer.
Wow. It sounds like there's a whole universe of other technologies bubbling up, too.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond EGS, you've got marine energy trying to harness waves, tides, ocean currents, even differences in ocean temperature or salinity. Lots of different approaches being tested.
Any examples working now?
The Siwa Lake Tidal Power Station in South Korea is one of the world's largest tidal power plants, but mostly marine energy is still pretty early stage.
What else is out there?
Well, there's research into harvesting the infrared heat the Earth radiates out, advanced algae fuels, as we mentioned, space-based solar power beaming energy down from orbit.
Seriously? Space solar?
Yep. Technologically complex and currently way too expensive, but people are working on it. More down-to-earth ideas, too, like collecting static electricity from water vapor could be useful in low-income regions.
And nuclear. You mentioned that debate.
Right. Is current nuclear renewable? Most definitions say no. But advanced reactors, like breeder reactors that make more fuel than they use, or fusion power if we ever crack it. The Brundtland Commission once suggested those could be considered renewable. It's debated. And then there's artificial photosynthesis trying to copy plants to make fuel directly from sunlight, water, and CO2. Huge challenge, but huge potential.
It's incredible, the range of innovation. So shifting to the market side, what's the picture there? Jobs, investment?
It's a rapidly growing sector. Solar is really leading the pack in terms of new capacity being added each year.
And jobs. Does it create more jobs than fossil fuels?
Studies generally show that, yes, investment in renewables, especially solar, tends to create more jobs per dollar invested or per unit of energy produced compared to fossil fuels. Globally, millions are employed in renewables now. Solar PV is the biggest employer within the sector.
Is there a bottleneck with skilled workers?
That's becoming a concern, actually. Particularly in solar, the demand for installers and technicians is growing so fast, the workforce supply is struggling to keep up in some regions.
Who's leading the growth?
China has been a massive driver of renewable electricity growth recently, but really a large number of countries now have significant installed capacity and, crucially, policies supporting renewables.
Is 100% renewable energy actually feasible? Across everything?
There's research suggesting it is, yeah. Technically possible and potentially economically viable to transition the entire energy system, electricity, heat, transport to 100% renewables. It's a massive undertaking, obviously.
Especially transport and heat, I guess.
Those are often seen as harder to decarbonize than electricity. But EVs are making huge strides in transport. Biofuels play a role. Hydrogen and synthetic electrofuels made from renewable electricity could be solutions for things like shipping and aviation. For heat, solar water heating is already big, especially in China. Heat pumps are crucial. And using renewable sources for district heating or industrial heat.
Okay. And the cost. You mentioned PV costs plummeted. How do renewables stack up against fossil fuels now, generally?
The picture has totally flipped in the last decade or so. IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, found that in 2022, the vast majority, something like 2/3 of newly installed renewable capacity globally, had lower electricity generation costs than the cheapest new fossil fuel options.
Cheaper than coal or gas?
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Particularly onshore wind and utility-scale solar PV. The cost reductions since 2000 have been dramatic. It's already saving consumers money on electricity bills in many places.
That's a powerful economic argument. So growth trends are strong. Investment is flowing.
Definitely. Investment in overall decarbonization renewables, EVs, storage, grids, efficiency is ramping up.
What's driving it? Policy, costs.
Both. Supportive government policies are key. High fossil fuel prices recently have certainly helped the economics of renewables, but fundamentally it's the falling LCOE, the levelized cost of energy, especially for solar and wind.
LCOE.
Yeah, basically the average cost to build and operate a power plant over its lifetime, divided by the total energy it produces. For solar and wind, that number has just kept falling, thanks to technology improvements, manufacturing scale, and learning curves.
Is potential future carbon pricing also a factor?
Increasingly, yes. The idea that emitting greenhouse gases might carry a financial liability down the road, that's another incentive pushing investment towards cleaner options. The decade 2010-2019 saw a huge amount poured into renewables, particularly by China, the US, Japan, Germany, the UK. And the share of global electricity coming from renewables just keeps ticking upwards.
What about the future? What are the projections? Are we hitting those targets, like the tripling goal?
Projections are very optimistic. Wind and solar alone are expected to generate over 30% of global electricity by 2030. The IEA forecasts renewables will account for the vast majority of all new electricity capacity added worldwide in the coming years.
And for net zero by 2050.
The IEA scenario suggests we'll need something like 90% of global electricity to come from renewables by mid-century to hit net zero. That's a massive shift.
Are countries planning for that?
We're seeing big plans. China wants to significantly boost renewable heating. The EU is pushing hard on green hydrogen. Even oil-rich Middle Eastern nations are now planning major renewable energy projects. The long-term expectation is clear. Renewables are set to dominate.
So the demand is there, from governments, businesses, consumers.
Seems so. Corporates are increasingly setting their own renewable energy targets, driven by cost, sustainability goals, and stakeholder pressure. They want choice, competitive prices, long-term stability.
And consumers.
Yeah.
Can we choose green energy?
In many places, yes. Green tariffs or renewable energy programs offered by utilities are becoming more common, allowing consumers to opt for power sourced from renewables. Statistics show renewables meeting a growing slice of demand across sectors, though transport is still lagging behind electricity and heat.
What about developing countries? Is renewable energy helping them leapfrog older technologies?
That's definitely the hope and increasingly the reality. It's crucial for expanding energy access and tackling poverty without locking in fossil fuel infrastructure.
Is investment happening there?
Interestingly, yes. Since 2015, investment in non-hydro renewables has actually been higher in developing and emerging economies than in developed ones.
Really? That's significant.
It is. The IEA sees renewables as the main source of energy growth in places like Africa and Central South America. Many of these countries have fantastic solar and wind resources. Plus, there's potential for local manufacturing, creating jobs, and reducing import dependence.
Any specific examples?
Oh, loads. Kenya's big investment in geothermal, Ethiopia's wind farms, Morocco's huge Noor Ouarzazate solar complex. It's happening across the continent and beyond.
It really sounds like policy has been the linchpin for all this.
Absolutely critical. Couldn't have happened without policy support. Early on, Europe led the way with things like feed-in tariffs. Now, most countries worldwide have some kind of renewable energy support policy.
Are there global organizations helping?
Yes, IRENA is key, promoting adoption, sharing best practices, helping with policy design. The UN Sustainable Energy for All initiative is another big one, and the Paris Agreement really galvanized national action and target setting.
What kinds of policies? Feed-in tariffs.
Those were important early on. Now you see more auctions, tax credits, renewable portfolio standards requiring utilities to source a certain percentage from renewables. Green banks are emerging too, using public funds to leverage private investment. And policies targeting specific sectors, promoting EVs in transport, renewables and building codes, supporting green hydrogen for industry.
Like the European Green Deal.
Exactly. That's a huge comprehensive package aiming for climate neutrality by 2050, driving policy across all sectors.
And all this policy and growth must mean serious money flowing in. What are the finance trends?
Finance has grown steadily, really taking off since around 2018. Billions pouring in year after year.
Driven by?
Climate awareness, definitely. Energy security concerns, especially recently. Sheer investor interest renewables are now seen as a major growth market. And of course, those supportive policies and falling costs make the investments pencil out.
Where's the money going mostly? Solar and wind?
Overwhelmingly, yes. Investment has really concentrated on solar and wind. Other renewables, hydro, bioenergy, geothermal, marine, have actually seen less investment flow in recent years, relatively speaking. 2023 saw a particularly massive jump in solar and wind funding.
Is it enough, though, for those net zero goals?
Not yet. While the growth is impressive, analysis suggests clean energy investment needs to increase substantially, perhaps triple by the end of this decade, to get us on track for those net zero emission scenarios. Big challenge there.
Okay, let's talk debates. There always are with big transitions. Nuclear is renewable. You touched on that.
Right. It's a persistent debate. Legally, most places don't define current nuclear tech, using uranium fission, as renewable. Utah is a rare exception, apparently. Dictionary definitions usually omit it, or maybe mention the Earth's natural geothermal heat from decay as an edge case.
What about energy agencies?
The US EIA calls uranium non-renewable. Doesn't really comment on MOX fuel using plutonium. But yeah, the Brundtland Commission did suggest advanced concepts like breeders or fusion could be seen as renewable due to fuel efficiency or source. It's complex. And waste is part of the debate, though some renewables have waste issues too.
Geopolitics. How does this shift affect global power dynamics?
Potentially a huge shift. Countries rich in fossil fuels might lose influence. Countries with great renewable resources, sun, wind, or dominance in manufacturing the tech, like China with solar panels currently.
They could gain influence.
Exactly. Maybe become major energy exporters via green hydrogen, for example. It could also cause instability for countries heavily dependent on oil and gas revenues now.
But less dependent on fuel imports overall.
That's a potential benefit for many countries, yes. Renewables don't need constant fuel shipments. Reduces risks tied to volatile global fuel markets and political dependencies. As Frans Timmermans from the EU said during the 2021 energy crisis, the answer isn't less Green Deal, it's more Green Deal, faster renewables deployment for security.
What about the materials needed? Lithium? Copper? Is that a new dependency?
It's a major consideration. Building all these wind turbines, solar panels, batteries, grids requires a lot more of certain minerals and metals.
And mining has impacts.
Absolutely. Water use, land use, deforestation, impacts on endangered species. All the usual mining concerns apply. And like with solar manufacturing, the mining and processing for some key minerals are geographically concentrated in just a few countries.
Supply chain risks again, and ethical concerns.
Yes, both. That's why recycling and developing a circular economy for these materials is so important, to reduce reliance on new mining. There's even controversial talk about deep-sea mining for some minerals, and rare earth mining, used in some magnets for turbines, can produce radioactive waste.
And the land use.
Yeah.
Renewables taking up space, impacting conservation.
That's another growing debate. Large solar and wind farms do have a significant land footprint, sometimes larger per unit of energy than fossil fuel plants, though without the ongoing fuel extraction footprint.
So conflicts with nature reserves.
It's happening. Projects proposed in or near sensitive habitats. There's often an overlap between areas with the best renewable potential and areas important for biodiversity. It really highlights the need for careful planning, siting decisions, and mitigation strategies. We can't solve the climate crisis by creating a biodiversity crisis.
Right, and kind of ironically is climate change itself affecting renewables?
It is, yeah. More unpredictable weather is becoming a problem. Changes in rainfall patterns hitting hydropower output, weird wind events affecting turbines, more cloud cover or extreme heat impacting solar panel efficiency.
Glaciers melting affecting hydro too.
Yes, long-term supply for rivers fed by glaciers is a concern. Even droughts impacting cooling water availability for thermal power plants, including nuclear. It's all interconnected.
Okay, shifting slightly to society, how do people feel about renewables? Is there public support?
Generally, yes, very strong support. Surveys consistently show people want more renewables to fight climate change. The European Investment Bank found huge majorities in favor.
Does it vary by technology?
It can. In the U.S., for instance, solar tends to have broad bipartisan support. Wind is sometimes more popular with Democrats, while Republicans might show more support for nuclear.
What about local opposition? NIMBism.
That definitely happens, especially with onshore wind farms. Concerns about visual impact, aesthetics, noise, sometimes impact on property values, and worries about bird and bat collisions, though technology is improving there. But overall support for both solar and wind remains very high.
Can community ownership help?
It seems to. When local communities have a stake in a project, maybe own shares or receive direct benefits, acceptance tends to be higher. We see examples in Germany, Denmark, Sweden, where community energy has been quite successful.
Fascinating. Let's look back quickly. Was energy always renewable before coal took over?
Pretty much. Until the mid-1800s, almost all human energy came from renewables. Traditional biomass firewood was huge. Wind-powered ships and windmills. Water-powered mills, geothermal used for bathing and heating in volcanic areas, human and animal power, of course.
So fossil fuels are the relatively recent blip.
In the grand scheme of human history, yes. There was even early recognition of solar's potential. Werner von Siemens wrote about it in the 1800s. Scientific American, too.
What kicked off the modern renewable push?
Concerns about peak oil, the idea we'd run out, and the rise of the environmental movement in the 1970s were major drivers. That's when we saw the first modern electricity-generating wind turbines. Solar farms were tried, but were initially way too expensive.
Government support helped bridge that cost gap.
Crucially important, yes. Especially during financial downturns, policies helped keep the industry afloat and drive down costs through deployment. And now renewables are a major, growing slice of the global electricity pie.
It's amazing how far back some of these ideas go.
Totally. Windmills in ancient Persia, water mills in Roman times in China, Archimedes supposedly using mirrors to focus sunlight, passive solar design in ancient buildings for heating and cooling, solar ovens, using wind for transport for thousands of years. It really puts our current transition in perspective. We're essentially rediscovering and scaling up ancient wisdom with modern tech.
This has been, well, a genuinely illuminating deep dive. Renewable energy, it's clearly not just a phase, it's a fundamental shift. So, to sort of wrap up, vital for climate change, growing incredibly fast, costs coming down, but, real challenges too. Intermittency, materials, land use. We need to manage those carefully.
For sure. There were definitely some aha moments, I think. Hope listeners felt that too.
Me too. And considering that long history you mentioned, alongside the sheer urgency of the climate situation now, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. What innovations really will be the most critical going forward? How do we best balance the tech push with environmental care and getting everyone on board?
That balance. Technology, environment, society. It's the key question, maybe.
A complex equation, no easy answers.
A really powerful thought to leave folks with. If anything we talked about today sparked your interest, definitely dig deeper. This field is huge. It's changing constantly. Always more to learn.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. The Manila Galleon trade route.
Yeah, it's an incredible story spanning, what, 2.5 centuries?
Exactly, 1565 right up to 1815. These Spanish ships, sometimes called the Nao de China, or the Galleon de Acapulco,
Right.
they were the lifeline, really, between the Philippines, the Spanish East Indies back then, and Mexico, which was New Spain.
Just 1 or 2 voyages a year back and forth between Manila and Acapulco, but incredibly important.
Absolutely. All organized by the Spanish crown.
Yeah.
It was the maritime route from the East Indies to the Americas for Spain.
And the term Manila Galleon itself, it refers to the yeah, but also the whole trade route.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand this route, its impact, and maybe uncover some surprising details.
And we're mainly drawing on the Wikipedia page for this one, which is pretty comprehensive.
It is. Okay, so let's dive in. The sheer scale, like you said, 250 years. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. This wasn't just about trade. It fundamentally shaped economies, cultures, connects continents. We're still seeing the ripples.
Totally. And just finding the route back east, that was a huge hurdle initially.
Well, yeah. Magellan got there in 1521, saw the Philippines, but the return trip, no luck.
And others tried too, right?
Yeah.
Trinidad, Saavedra, Cerrone, Bernardo de la Torre. They just couldn't find those eastward winds, the westerlies.
Nope. The Pacific is just different. You needed to figure out the winds and currents. It wasn't like the Atlantic.
Even Francis Xavier, the missionary, apparently warned them off trying again around 1552. Too many losses.
Which just shows how tough it was. These weren't small failures. Ships and lives were lost.
It really highlights how crucial Andres de Ordenes' contribution was.
Definitely. He was the one who really pushed for the Philippines-Mexico route, argued it was better than trying the Strait of Magellan or, hacking through the jungle in Darien.
And he had this theory, right, about the winds.
Exactly. The Tornaviaje, the return voyage idea. He figured the Pacific winds might circulate, kind of like the Atlantic winds do, in a big gyre.
So in 1565, with Legazpi's expedition to basically conquer the Philippines, Urdaneta and another guy, Alonso de Arellano, they tested it.
Yeah, instead of trying to sail straight east, which hadn't worked.
They went north, way north.
Right, up to about the 38th parallel. Off Japan, basically, to catch those westerlies blowing towards America.
A massive detour, and it took Urdaneta's ship 129 days.
Can you imagine 129 days at sea back then?
They finally hit land near Santa Catalina Island, California, then sailed south to Acapulco, arrived October 1565.
But it wasn't easy. That first trip, apparently they didn't pack enough food. Lots of the crew died.
Grim. And funnily enough, Arellano, the other captain, actually got back earlier using a more southerly route.
Yeah, but Urdaneta's route, the northern one, that became the standard. It proved it could be done consistently, even if it was long.
And it immediately put California on Spain's map, in a way.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about the trade anymore. It was about securing that route.
Which became obvious pretty quickly when Francis Drake showed up in 1579.
Ah, Drake. Right. Sailed up the California coast, nabbed a Spanish ship heading to Manila.
And then went north, hoping to catch a returning galleon full of treasure.
Exactly. Didn't find one, but he definitely made the Spanish nervous. Planted an English flag near Drake's Bay.
So Spain started thinking more about California as maybe a safe harbor, a stopover point.
Precisely. Initially, that was the main reason for exploring California, finding safe spots for the galleons.
And later, by the 18th century, they didn't have to go quite so far north anymore.
Right. They refined the route, usually made landfall somewhere between Point Conception and Cape San Lucas, avoided the really foggy Central Coast.
And the Portola expedition in 1769 set up San Diego and Monterey?
Yep. And Monterey actually became a mandatory stop for a while.
Really?
Yeah, between 1777 and 1794, by Crown order, they had to stop there about 40 days out from Acapulco. Gave them a chance to resupply, maybe make repairs.
Interesting. So California went from being like a waypoint discovery to an actual strategic part of the route.
Exactly. Shows how the system adapted over time.
Okay, let's talk about the trade itself. This was big money for Spain, right? And for the colonists in the Philippines.
Huge. It was the major revenue source for the Spanish Philippines.
And the ships themselves, often built by Filipino workers.
Yes, that's a key point. Skilled Filipino artisans built many of these massive galleons using local timber like Philippine teak, which was apparently very durable, sails from Ilocos, ropes from Manila hemp.
That's amazing. Local know-how powering this global trade.
It really was. And it's something that often gets overlooked. These weren't just Spanish ships. They were built with Filipino expertise and resources.
So early on, there were maybe multiple ships a year.
Yeah, until 1593. Could be 2 or more each way.
But the merchants back in Seville, Spain, they weren't thrilled.
Not at all. This trade bypassed them, you see, so they complained to the king.
And King Philip II put limits on it.
Yep. A 1593 decree. Only 2 ships per year each way, plus a reserve ship in each port. And they approved armed escorts and armada.
Trying to control it, which probably just meant
more smuggling. Exactly.
Yeah.
When you try to restrict trade like that, contraband and underreporting become common.
So what were they actually carrying? From Manila to Acapulco?
Oh, all sorts of Asian luxury goods. Mostly sourced from Chinese merchants from Fujian province who came to Manila.
Like silks, porcelain.
Definitely. Spices, ivory, lacquerware, beautiful silks, but also stuff from other places, jade, cotton rugs from India, spices from Indonesia and Malaysia.
And Japan, too. Fans, chests.
Yeah, through the Nanban trade, before Japan closed itself off, screens, porcelain, lacquerware, Manila was this incredible melting pot of Asian goods.
A real hub.
The central point connecting all these Asian trade networks to the Americas.
But it wasn't just luxury goods, was it? There was a darker side.
Unfortunately, yes, the galleons were also involved in the slave trade.
People brought from various parts of Asia.
Right. Enslaved people, often just lumped together as chinos, regardless of where they were actually from, East Africa, India, Southeast Asia, even the Philippines itself, transported to Mexico.
Along with African slaves,
Yeah.
called Negroes, or Cafres.
Yes. It's a grim reminder that this global exchange involved forced migration and exploitation, too.
Though some free Filipinos, Quinos Libres, also migrated this way.
That's right. They often settled near the ports, like Acapulco.
And the whole thing was greased by silver.
Silver was key. East Asia, especially China, ran on a silver economy. So all those goods were bought with silver mined in Muspain, Mexico, and Potosi in modern-day Bolivia.
So silver flows out from the Americas, Asian goods flow back.
Pretty much. That American silver transformed economies across the Pacific.
And once the goods hit Acapulco, it wasn't the end of the journey.
Not at all. Mule trains along the China Road to Mexico City.
Then across to Veracruz on the Gulf Coast.
Right. And loaded onto the treasure fleet heading for Spain.
That whole overland trek must have created jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Porters, inns.
Oh, yeah. It stimulated the local economy in New Spain. Porters, innkeepers running misiones, haciendas supplying food for the journeys. It was a whole ecosystem.
And it wasn't just Mexico and the Philippines directly involved. Other places tapped in.
Sure. Guatemala, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, they had supplementary routes feeding into or off of the main galleon trade.
So what went back to Manila? Mostly silver.
Mostly, yeah. About 80% of the cargo going west was silver from the Americas.
But other American things, too.
Yes. Cochineal dye, that bright red color, was huge. Plus, seeds and crops, sweet potato, corn, tomatoes, tobacco, chocolate, cocoa, even grapevines and fig trees. The Colombian exchange in action, basically.
And the other 20%? Stuff from Europe.
Transshipped goods, yeah. Wine, olive oil, metal tools, weapons, things like that, coming originally from Europe or North Africa via Spain.
So this whole Pacific route was Spain's way around the Portuguese, essentially, because of that old Treaty of Tordesillas.
Exactly. It let them tap into Asian trade without going through the Indian Ocean, which was Portugal's sphere, more or less.
And crossing Panama, though shorter, was just too difficult. Jungle, disease.
Impractical for this kind of large-scale regular trade. Mexico made more sense.
4 months at sea, minimum. That's just hard to fathom.
It really connected the Philippines to Mexico and through Mexico to Spain. Culturally, too.
How so?
Well, you mentioned many Castillas or Spaniards in the Philippines were actually Mexican-born. There's a lot of Mexican influence in Filipino-Hispanic culture. Soldiers, settlers often came via Acapulco.
And the trade link lasted, even after the galleons stopped?
Pretty much. Even after Mexican independence, trade continued. Just a brief halt during the Spanish-American War. The connection was deep.
And religion played a part, praying for safe crossings.
Definitely. In Manila, they commended voyages to Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Potavaga, the queen of the galleons. Survivors would give thanks at La Ermita Church.
Wow. And the silver going to China. You said it might have impacted the Ming Dynasty.
Some historians argue that, yeah, the massive influx of silver disrupted the Chinese economy, contributing to the instability that eventually led to the Ming collapse. Global consequences from this one route.
Incredible. But, like all things, it eventually ended.
Yeah, the Bourbon reforms in the 1740s started opening things up, allowed other registered ships, navios de registro, to sail solo in the Pacific.
More efficient. Harder for the British Navy to catch.
Probably both. They were less predictable than the big scheduled galleon.
And then the official end came in the early 19th century.
Right. The Cortes of Cadiz suppressed the route in 1813. Ferdinand VII ratified it in 1814 after the Napoleonic Wars.
The last ship arrived in Manila in 1815. Empty.
The San Fernando Magallanes, yeah. Cargo got requisitioned in Mexico, so 1815 is the end date, just before Mexico became independent.
And after that, the Philippines were run directly from Madrid.
Correct, until steamships and the Suez Canal came along mid-century.
Which cut the travel time down to, what, 40 days?
Yeah, made the old galleon route totally obsolete.
Let's talk about the ships themselves, the galleons.
Yeah.
They were enormous, right?
So their time, absolutely colossal. Some of the largest ships built in Europe or anywhere, really.
Built mainly in the Philippines. Cavite.
Mostly, yeah. Between 1609 and 1616 alone, they built 9 galleons and 6 smaller galleys there. Cost a fortune, 78,000 pesos each. Thousands of trees.
Can you give us an idea of size?
Well, 16th century ones were maybe 1,700 to 2,000 tons. Could carry 300, even 500 people.
Wow.
The Concepcion wrecked in 1638 was maybe 45-ish meters long, 2,000 tons. The Santísima Trinidad was over 51 meters long. Giants.
And mostly Philippine built, you said. Only a few in Mexico.
That's the stat, yeah. Only about 8 built in Mexico. The vast majority came from Philippine shipyards. Again, highlights that local capability.
And the crews. Who sailed these things?
A real mix. Average sailor, maybe late 20s, old hands in their 40s, 50s.
Too. Ship's pages.
Yeah, starting as young as 8. Often orphans, poor kids from Seville, Mexico, Manila. Then apprentices, working their way up. Certified sailors by around 20.
Must have been a tough life. High mortality.
Brutal. Starvation, disease, scurvy were rampant, especially early on. It was hard to even find crews in Manila willing to make the return trip sometimes.
And mostly Filipino and other Southeast Asian sailors.
The majority, yes. Collectively called Indios, plus some deportees, criminals.
Spaniards were the minority?
Less than a third, usually, but they held the key officer positions, generally.
And when they docked, dock workers unloaded.
Right. In Acapulco, often free men of African descent doing that work, apparently well paid.
So the whole operation involved so many different groups of people.
Truly a cross-section of the Spanish colonial world and beyond.
But many ships didn't complete the journey. Shipwrecks were common.
Oh, definitely. The legends are right up there with Caribbean treasure wrecks. Legazpi's own ship, the San Pablo, was the first one wrecked heading to Mexico back in 1568.
And lots wrecked within the Philippines itself.
20 of them between 1576 and 1798. Dangerous waters. Plus the San Felipe wrecked off Japan in 1596.
And that possible wreck on the Oregon coast. The beeswax wreck.
The Santo Cristo de Burgos. Yeah, fascinating story. Supposedly wrecked in 1693. It's part of Tillamook and Clatsop oral history. Stories of survivors, even.
Still debated, but intriguing.
Very. It connects this Pacific trade to a very different part of North America.
And besides storms and reefs, there were enemies.
Warships. Yeah, out of 108 galleons over the centuries, 26 were captured or sunk by enemies.
Like Cavendish capturing the Santa Ana,
Yeah.
Anson taking the Covadonga.
Those are famous ones. Van Noort sank the San Diego. The Santísima Trinidad was captured twice, actually. Once in 1762. These were high-value targets in wartime.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. What about Hawaii? Did the galleons ever make contact?
Ah, the million-dollar question. Or maybe the silver peso question.
Yeah, right. The westward route went south of Hawaii, hundreds of crossings, but no official records of contact.
Correct. And historians like Henry Kamen argue the Spanish just weren't precise enough navigators to find islands north of their route consistently.
But others say, hang on, Spain explored a lot of the Pacific, found Guam, the Marianas.
Exactly. So could they have stumbled upon Hawaii? Maybe?
There was that 1542 expedition with Juan Gaetano. His report might describe Hawaii, or maybe the Marshalls.
It's ambiguous. And remember, Spain kept the route details secret. Monopoly, pirates, all that. So if they did find islands they didn't see value in, they might not have broadcast it.
Hawaii might not have seemed worth settling compared to, say, the Marianas.
Possibly. Plus, there's that Spanish chart.
The one showing islands at Hawaii's latitude, but the longitude is way off.
Right. Longitude was tricky back then. But it labels islands La Mesa, maybe Hawaii Island, La Desgraciada, Maui, Los Monjes, Kahulawe, Lanai, Molokai. Suggestive names.
And then there are the Hawaiian oral traditions.
Yeah, collected by people like William Ellis in the early 19th century, stories of foreigners arriving before Captain Cook.
Like that story Herb Kawainui Kane relates. 7 guys landing at Kealakekua Bay.
In a painted boat, canopy, white and yellow clothes, one with a sword, knelt to pray, married local women. The details are specific.
But no names in the genealogies. And some scholars are skeptical.
Understandably, oral tradition needs careful handling. But it's intriguing evidence. People like Richard Rogers are still looking for shipwreck evidence. The debate isn't settled.
Definitely adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing. Okay, finally, let's talk about preserving this history. UNESCO recognition efforts.
Yeah, that's been gaining momentum. Started around 2010 with the Philippines organizing meetings.
Bringing together different countries involved in the trade.
Right, discussions between Mexico, the Philippines, Spain,
Right.
recognizing the shared heritage. Documentaries have been made.
And an official World Heritage nomination started in 2014.
Yes, jointly by Mexico and the Philippines, backed by Spain. Spain also suggested nominating the archives, the paper trail, to the memory of the World Register.
And museums have been set up too.
Yep. The Philippines established the Manila Galleon Museum near Manila. Mexico reopened a gallery in Puerto Vallarta. Expert meetings on shipbuilding, archaeology, textiles. It's an ongoing effort.
It really shows a growing appreciation for just how significant this route was.
Absolutely. It deserves that kind of recognition.
So, wrapping up our deep dive, the Manila Galleon wasn't just ships carrying silver. It was like an early engine of globalization.
Totally. Connecting continents, cultures, economies in a way that hadn't really happened before across the Pacific. Silver trade, cultural exchange, people moving.
And we hit on some surprising things: the Filipino shipbuilding, the diverse crews facing incredible hardship, that tantalizing Hawaii question.
And the fact that people are actively working now to preserve and recognize this history through UNESCO.
It really makes you think about how interconnected the world was even centuries ago.
It does. It challenges simpler narratives and shows these complex webs of exchange.
Right. So, here's something to mull over. How did this one long-lasting trade route shape the world we live in now, in ways we might not even realize? And what other hidden histories of global connection are still out there, waiting to be explored?
Good question. There's always more to uncover.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Manila Galleons. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are plunging into the captivating realm of sharks.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It really is. We've got a veritable ocean of information here, all stemming from a pretty comprehensive Wikipedia entry on these cartilaginous marvels. Our mission, to sift through it all, basically, and bring you the most surprising and essential insights about sharks. Everything from their ancient origins to their vital role today.
It's like a shortcut to understanding them better.
Exactly. Your shortcut to becoming instantly knowledgeable about these often misunderstood creatures without feeling like you've just swallowed an encyclopedia. This source really covers a huge amount.
Absolutely. This single source provides an incredible breadth of knowledge. It touches on their evolutionary history, going back hundreds of millions of years.
Incredible.
Their intricate anatomy, just perfectly adapted for aquatic life, their diverse behaviors, ecological roles, and, well, crucially, their current conservation status, which is pretty concerning.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. It really highlights how much there is beyond that stereotypical image of the predator.
Right. There's so much more to them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Maybe start somewhere a bit unexpected. What's in a name? Because it turns out shark wasn't always what they were called.
No, it wasn't. What's fascinating here is that until the 16th century, sailors, mariners, they commonly called sharks sea dogs.
Sea dogs, I like that.
Yeah, and you still see echoes of it today in names like dogfish or porbeagle. Gives you a sense of maybe how they were perceived back then compared to land animals.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what qualities they associated with dogs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely paints a different picture than the predators we usually imagine. But where did shark come from then? It sounds a bit more, ominous.
It does make you wonder, yeah. And the origin, the etymology of shark, it's actually a bit uncertain, but the most likely source seems to be the Dutch word schurk.
Schurk, what does that mean?
It translates to villain or scoundrel. So the thinking is the name arose because of their predatory behavior. Like how we use terms like card shark or loan shark for people seen as preying on others.
Interesting. So the name might tell us more about how humans saw them than about the fish itself.
Exactly. More about perceived character.
I also saw something in our source about a potential Mayan origin.
Yeah.
But that was wrong.
Yes, that theory's been disproven now. The idea was that shark came from the Yucatec Maya word zuk, pronounced sort of like suk, which means shark.
Okay.
And this got some traction, even from the Oxford English Dictionary. They noted the first prominent use of shark in English after Sir John Hawkins' crew showed one off in London in 1569.
Right, I remember reading that. They labeled it shark.
Yeah, referring to the big Caribbean shark. So it seemed plausible, connecting this strange new creature with the language from where it was found.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. 1569 sounds pretty definite, but it wasn't the first time.
Not quite. If you dig a bit deeper, the Middle English Dictionary actually found an isolated record. The word shark, referring to a sea fish, appeared in a letter written by Thomas Beckington way back in 1442.
1442, wow, that's much earlier.
Much earlier. And that basically rules out the New World origin. It shows the term was already around in English before that big London exhibition in 1569.
So that flashy London debut wasn't the origin story after all. Shark has been around longer, probably from that rather unflattering Dutch term.
Seems likely.
Okay, from names to, well, no bones about it, let's talk origins. Sharks have been around for a seriously long time, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking shark-like chondrichthyans, so cartilaginous fish with sharky features, appearing way back in the Devonian period. That's about 419 to 359 million years ago.
That's incredible.
But it goes even deeper. There are fossilized scales, like chondrichthyan scales, found dating back to the late Ordovician. That's 458 to 444 million years ago.
That's mind-boggling. Before trees.
Exactly. Before trees, before dinosaurs even roamed the earth.
So when did the modern sharks, the ones we sort of recognize, actually show up?
The earliest confirmed modern sharks, the Selachii group, they appear in the early Jurassic, around 200 million years ago.
Okay.
The oldest known member is Agalius. But there's some evidence, some suggestions, that true sharks might go back even further, maybe into the Permian, so the lineage is just incredibly ancient.
A bit murky in the really early days, but definitely stretching back hundreds of millions of years. And these early modern sharks, did they just sort of pop up? Or was there a lot of evolution happening?
Oh, the early Jurassic was a time of major diversification for sharks. The modern orders we see today mostly started appearing then.
Right.
And interestingly, during the Jurassic, these selachimorphs, the modern sharks, they gradually replaced another group of shark-like fish called hybodonts, which had been dominant before.
Ah, so a changing of the guard, so to speak.
Exactly. A major ecological shift in the oceans, one successful group giving way to an even more successful one.
Okay, ancient origins, Jurassic shakeup. Let's dive into today's diversity. I know there's way more than just great whites. How many species are we actually talking about?
It's an impressive number. Over 500 known species of sharks.
500.
Yeah, and they're classified across 13 orders, including some extinct ones. Now, sharks belong to the subclass Elasmobranchiae. That also includes rays and skates.
Right, they're related.
They are.
Yeah.
All within the class Chondrichthyes, the cartilaginous fish. Chondros means cartilage. So these are the fish with cartilage skeletons, not bone like most fish.
Got it.
For a while, scientists weren't sure if sharks were one single group or if maybe some were closer to rays. But the latest molecular studies really support the idea that sharks are one group and batoids, that's rays and skates, are another distinct group, both monophyletic.
Meaning they each have their own single common ancestor.
Exactly, their own distinct evolutionary paths.
Okay, 500 species, 13 orders. Are there some key features that help tell these orders apart?
Definitely. The source gives a good overview. Take the carcharodontiforms, the ground sharks. That's the largest order.
Okay.
It includes familiar ones like bull sharks, tiger sharks, hammerheads. They often have an elongated snout in that nictitating membrane.
The protective third eyelid, that little blinky thing.
That's the one, yeah, shields the eye.
Okay, what about other main groups?
Then you have the lamniforms, the mackerel sharks. This includes icons like the great white and mako, but also filter feeders like the basking shark and the deep-sea goblin shark.
Quite a mix.
It is. They often have large jaws and use oviviparous reproduction eggs hatch inside the mother, live birth. And this order also includes the extinct giant megalodon, Otodus megalodon.
Ah, megalodon, always a fan favorite.
Right. It's wild that the gentle basking shark is in the same order as the great white.
It really is.
Yeah.
Any other major orders we should know?
Well, there's Erectolobiforms, the carpet sharks, very diverse, includes zebra sharks, nurse sharks, those camouflaged wobbegongs, and the biggest fish of all, the whale shark.
The gentle giant.
Exactly. And then you have Pristiforiforms, the saw sharks. Easy to spot with that long, toothed snout they use for hunting.
A built-in saw on your face. Sounds pretty unique.
Definitely stands out.
So this classification boils down to these orders, and then there's another layer, superorders, Galea and Squalia.
Exactly. The whole group, Selachomorpha, is split into these two superorders. Galea, or Galeomorphae, includes orders like the ground sharks, mackerel sharks, carpet sharks, and bullhead sharks.
Okay.
And Squalia, or Squalomorphae, covers orders like the cow and frilled sharks, saw sharks, dogfish, rough sharks, and angel sharks. So it's, a complex family tree, basically, showing how they're all related evolutionarily.
Got the family tree down.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how they're actually built for ocean life. Their anatomy is so different from ours. Let's start with the obvious. Those teeth.
Shark teeth are truly remarkable. Unlike ours, they're not fixed in the jawbone. They're embedded in the gums, and they are constantly replaced throughout their lives. Rows of replacement teeth grow inside the jaw, moving forward like a conveyor belt.
Like a conveyor belt. How many teeth are we talking?
Some sharks can lose 30,000 or more teeth in their lifetime.
30,000? That's unbelievable.
It is. The replacement rate varies, could be every few days, for some, several months for others. It's like a never-ending supply of sharp knives.
A lifetime supply for a dental practice. And the shape isn't random, right? It depends on what they eat.
Precisely. The tooth shape is beautifully adapted to the diet. Sharks eating hard-shelled things like crabs have dense, flat teeth for crushing.
Makes sense.
Fish eaters, needle-like teeth for gripping slippery prey. And those taking on bigger animals, like mammals, often have pointed lower teeth to grab, and triangular, serrated upper teeth for cutting.
Efficient.
Very. And then filter feeders, like the basking shark, have tiny, almost non-functional teeth. Don't need them. It really shows how they've adapted to fill different roles in the ecosystem.
Form follows function. Okay, we know they're cartilaginous, no bony skeleton. How does that affect them?
Well, the cartilage skeleton is key. It's flexible, durable, but much lighter than bone, about half the density.
So less energy needed to move.
Exactly, energetically advantageous in water. But the downside is no rib cage. So on land, they're vulnerable, can be crushed by their own weight. It's why you don't see them sunbathing.
Explains why they stay in the water. What about their jaws? I heard they aren't attached directly to the skull.
That's right. Like rays and skates, their jaws aren't fused to the cranium. This gives them amazing flexibility. They can protrude their jaws forward to grab prey.
Wow.
And the jaw surface is strengthened by these tiny hexagonal plates called tesserae. They're little blocks of calcium salts arranged like a mosaic. Gives the cartilage incredible strength, almost like bone.
So it's strong but flexible.
Exactly. Bigger species like great whites can have multiple layers of tesserae for extra reinforcement. Plus, their snout, the rostrum, is often flexible too, helps absorb impact during feeding. It's a powerful yet shock-absorbing bite.
A powerful, flexible biting machine.
Yeah.
Their fins, those iconic shapes cutting through the water.
The fin skeletons are supported by soft, unsegmented rays called ceratotrichia, made of an elastic protein, kind of like keratin in our hair.
Okay.
Most sharks have 8 fins. An interesting thing is their structure generally means they can only move forward effectively. Limited ability to swim backward. They're built for forward momentum.
It's like a torpedo.
Yeah.
Got it. And that rough skin, the dermal denticles. Not
Yeah.
just protection, right?
You're right. These placoid scales, or dermal denticles, form a flexible outer layer, almost like an external skeleton. Provides attachment points for swimming muscles, saves energy, but they also have a hydrodynamic advantage. Reduces turbulence as they swim, makes them more efficient. Plus, in some species, pigmented denticles create patterns, spots or stripes, for camouflage. Helps them blend in, sneak up on prey.
Like tiger shark stripes, smart design.
It's like specialized body armor that also helps them swim faster and hide better. Nature's brilliant.
It really is. Finally, let's talk tails. The caudal fin. So many different shapes. What's the story there?
The tail is crucial for thrust, speed, acceleration. Its shape is directly linked to that. Sharks have a heterocircle tail, meaning the upper lobe, the dorsal part, is usually bigger than the lower ventral part. This is because the vertebral column extends up into that upper lobe.
Oh, interesting.
Gives a greater surface area for muscle attachment, helps with locomotion, especially since they're negatively buoyant. It provides a powerful push from the top, really efficient for thrust.
And the shape varies a lot.
Hugely. Reflects their lifestyle, hunting strategy. Tiger sharks, for example, have a large upper lobe for maneuverability, sudden bursts of speed.
Okay.
Porbeagles chase fast-schooling fish, so they have a large lower lobe for sustained speed. And then specialists, like the thresher shark, an incredibly long upper lobe, they use it to literally whip and stun prey.
Wow. A built-in weapon on their tail.
Pretty much. It's like having a built-in whip.
So every part, teeth to tail, finely tuned for survival. Remarkable. Okay, physiology. How do they actually work? Staying afloat first.
Yeah.
No swim bladders like bony fish.
Yeah.
How do they manage buoyancy?
That's a key difference. Instead of a gas bladder, they rely mainly on a huge liver filled with oil, especially a lipid called squalene, and their cartilage being less dense helps too.
How big is this liver?
Can be up to 30% of their total body mass.
30%? Wow.
Yeah. But even that has limits, so they also use dynamic lift generated by their fins as they swim to maintain depth.
So they have to keep moving to stay up, generally.
Many do. But interestingly, sand tiger sharks have a trick. They swallow air at the surface and store it in their stomachs. Acts like a temporary swim bladder.
Clever.
And then bottom dwellers, like nurse sharks, they often have negative buoyancy, helps them stay on the seafloor.
Makes sense. And I read something about tonic immobility, like a trance state.
Yes. If you flip some sharks over or stroke their snout, they enter this natural state of tonic immobility, temporary paralysis. Researchers sometimes use it to handle them safely. It's like a built-in off switch.
The built-in off switch. Handy for researchers, I bet. Now, breathing. Also different, right? Some have to keep swimming.
Exactly. They extract oxygen from water passing over their gills, like other fish. But unlike bony fish, their gill slits usually aren't covered, just lie in a row behind the head.
Okay.
Some species also have a spiracle, a modified slit behind the eye. Helps take in water, especially for bottom dwellers. Active open water sharks often have smaller spiracles or none at all.
And how do they get water over the gills?
Two main ways. Ram ventilation, swimming with the mouth open, forcing water through, or buccal pumping, actively pumping water over the gills while stationary.
So some can rest on the bottom.
Many can, but a few species are obligate ram ventilators. They've lost the ability to pump water. They must swim constantly to breathe. For them, stopping means suffocating.
So never taking a break is literally true for some sharks. What about body temperature? Are they all cold-blooded?
Most are poikilothermic or cold-blooded. Their internal temperature matches the surroundings, but members of the Lamniae family great whites, makos, are homeothermic. They maintain a body temperature higher than the water.
How do they do that?
Through a special network of blood vessels called the ret mirabile. It's a countercurrent heat exchanger. Conserves heat generated by their muscles.
Like a biological radiator working in reverse.
Exactly. It takes muscle heat and transfers it back to the incoming cold blood, keeping their core warm, a real advantage in colder waters. Some others, like thresher sharks, have similar systems.
Fascinating.
And sheer size helps too. Big sharks, like whale sharks, conserve heat better when diving deep. And get this, scalped hammerheads can actually close their mouth and gills on deep dives, hold their breath.
Holding their breath. That's amazing. Okay, dealing with salt water, osmoregulation. How do they manage their internal fluids in the ocean?
This is really cool. Unlike most bony fish, shark blood and tissues are generally isotonic with seawater.
Meaning they have the same salt concentration.
Pretty much, yeah. They achieve this with high levels of urea and a nut compound, TMAO, trimethylamine, and oxide in their bodies, keeps them in osmotic balance.
Like built-in antifreeze and salt regulator.
Exactly. It's so effective that most sharks can't survive in freshwater. But there are exceptions, like the bull shark. It has ways to excrete excess urea and handle freshwater.
Right, the famous bull shark.
And a side note, when a shark dies, that urea breaks down into ammonia. That's why dead sharks can smell so strongly of ammonia.
Ah, that explains it. And they have a special gland for salt.
Yes, the rectal gland. At the end of the intestine, it secretes excess chlorides, helps maintain that balance.
Okay, so they're living in their own slightly different internal sea. What about digestion? Pretty efficient, I imagine.
It is, but it can take a while. Food goes from the mouth to a J-shaped stomach for storage and initial digestion. And if they swallow something indigestible,
They can just eject it.
yeah, they might vomit it up or even turn their stomach inside out through their mouth to get rid of it.
Whoa, traumatic.
Definitely. A key difference from us is their short intestine. To compensate and absorb nutrients efficiently, they have a spiral valve inside. It increases the surface area, forces food to take a longer, winding path, like a spiral staircase for food.
An internal obstacle course. And finally, fluorescence. Some sharks glow. That sounds wild.
It does. A few deep-sea species, like the swell shark and chain cat shark, actually fluoresce under blue light. Their skin has molecules derived from kynurenic acid.
Why? Any idea?
The exact purpose is still being studied. Could be for communication, maybe camouflage in the deep, dark ocean. Adds another layer of mystery, doesn't it?
It really does. Sharks just keep getting more interesting. Okay, let's move to senses. How they perceive the world. Smell is legendary, right?
Oh, incredibly keen. Their olfactory organs are in short ducts between nasal openings. Some species can detect blood at concentrations as low as 1 part per million in seawater.
One drop in an Olympic pool.
That's the analogy, yeah. The size of their olfactory bulb, the smell processing part of the brain varies. Species in murky water often rely more on smell, so they have larger bulbs.
Makes sense. And they can tell direction.
Yes, by the tiny difference in timing when a scent hits each nostril. Like we use our ears for sound direction. And interestingly, they're often drawn to chemicals from animal intestines, not just blood. Explains why they might hang around sewage outfalls sometimes.
Ew.
And some, like nurse sharks, have barbels near the mouth, little feelers that enhance touch and chemical sensing for prey.
So, not just blood, a whole cocktail of scents. What about vision? We often think smell is everything for them.
Smell is crucial, but sight is also very well adapted. Their eyes are structurally similar to ours: lens, cornea, retina, but they have a tapetum lucidum.
The reflective layer for low light.
Exactly, like built-in night vision goggles. Its effectiveness varies, suggesting different levels of night adaptation. And unlike most bony fish, many sharks can dilate and contract their pupils, like us.
Do they blink?
No, they have eyelids but don't blink. The water keeps the eyes clean. Some have that nictitating membrane for protection during hunting.
Except the great white.
Right. The great white famously rolls its eyes back instead. The importance of sight versus other senses is debated, probably varies, but they can switch between seeing with one eye and using both for depth perception. Contrast against the background seems more important than color for most.
So, probably colorblind.
Many seem to be, yes. Mostly rod photoreceptors for night vision, or maybe just one type of cone for green light, so maybe not appreciating coral reef colors like we do, but excellent at spotting movement and contrast.
Good night vision, focus on contrast, makes sense. Hearing, can they hear us splashing from miles away?
Well, testing their hearing is tricky, but evidence suggests it's potentially sharp. They might detect prey from considerable distances. Their sensitive range is typically 20 to 1,000 hertz.
How does it work? No external ears.
Small openings on the head lead directly to the inner ear. Interestingly, the lateral line system, which detects water vibration, shares an origin with hearing. It's all connected in what's called the acoustico-lateralis system.
Okay, so feeling vibrations, maybe hearing sounds. Then there's the almost mythical sense. Electroreception, the ampullae of Lorenzini. What are they detecting?
It's a network of hundreds, even thousands, of electroreceptor organs, mostly on the head. They detect the electromagnetic fields produced by all living things.
Tiny electrical fields from muscle contractions.
Exactly. Crucial for finding prey hidden in sand, for example. Sharks have the greatest electrical sensitivity of any known animal.
Incredible, like a sixth sense.
It really is. It's not just for hunting nearby prey either. It might even help them navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. We're still figuring out all the ways they use it.
A built-in biological compass and life detector?
Yeah.
Amazing. And finally, the lateral line, sensing movement.
Exactly. It's a tactile system found in most fish. Detects water speed, pressure changes nearby, uses neuromasts, cells similar to the hair cells in our ears, helps them sense currents, obstacles, and struggling prey even if they can't see it. Usually detects low frequencies, like 25 to 50 hertz, the range of a moving animal.
Like sensors all along their body.
You got it. A whole suite of senses painting a detailed picture of their world.
Okay, let's shift gears. Life history. They aren't just hunters. They have life cycles. Long lifespans stand out for some species.
That's right. It varies hugely. Most live 20, 30 years. But some are exceptional. Spiny dogfish.
Over 100 years.
A century.
Whale sharks, too, thought to live over 100. And then the Greenland shark. Using radiocarbon dating on their eye lenses, one study estimated a large one was maybe 392 years old.
392.
With a margin of error, yeah. Meaning it was at least 272 years old. Potentially the longest-lived vertebrate known.
Nearly 4 centuries? That completely changes how you think about them.
It really does. Puts their vulnerability into perspective, doesn't it? Human timescales are so short compared to that.
Absolutely. What about reproduction? Not millions of eggs like some fish, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sharks are mostly K-selected. That means fewer well-developed young, not vast numbers of tiny ones.
Quality over quantity. Basically, offspring numbers range from just 2 to maybe over 100 per cycle, depending on the species, and they mature slowly. Lemon sharks take 13, 15 years to reach sexual maturity.
Slow and steady. And fertilization is internal.
Yes, internal fertilization. Males have modified pelvic fins called claspers. One is used to transfer sperm.
Is mating often seen?
Rarely observed in the wild. In smaller species like cat sharks, the male might curl around the female, larger ones might swim parallel. Females in many larger species often have bite marks.
From the male holding on.
Thought to be, yeah. Grasping to maintain position during mating or maybe courtship. Some females have even evolved thicker skin to handle it. Sounds pretty intense.
Ouch. Rough dating scene indeed. I also read about asexual reproduction. Parthenogenesis. That's unusual.
It is. Documented cases in captivity. Female sharks with no male contact conceiving and giving birth. Genetic tests confirmed. No paternal DNA.
Wow. Does it happen in the wild?
Unknown how common it is? Probably rare. Maybe a last resort if no mate is around. But it reduces genetic diversity, which isn't good long term. There's even speculation it might have hurt blue shark populations off Ireland. Fascinating, but maybe risky.
A biological backup plan, maybe. Now, the actual birth methods. Oviparity, viviparity, ovoviparity. Bit of a vocabulary lesson there.
Yeah. 3 main ways. Ovoviparity is most common.
Eggs hatch inside.
Exactly. Eggs hatch in the mother's oviduct. Embryos get nourishment from the yolk sac, maybe other fluids. Young are born live, fully functional. And some ovoviparous sharks have wild strategies. Oophagy, where the first hatchlings eat the other eggs.
Eating their siblings' potential food.
Or even eating their siblings. Sand tiger shark pups cannibalize each other in the womb. Talk about a competitive start.
Yikes. Okay, what's next?
Then oviparity, laying eggs. Usually in a tough, leathery case, often called a mermaid's purse, sometimes corkscrewed into crevices for safety. Horn sharks, cat sharks do this.
Mermaid's purse? I've seen those washed up.
Yeah. And finally, viviparity. Live birth, no egg case involved. Young are nourished either through a placenta, much like mammals.
Sharks have placentas.
Some do, like hammerheads, requiem sharks, bull sharks, blue sharks, or through other means in a placental viviparity. Gestation periods vary wildly. Dogfish can be pregnant for 18-24 months, maybe even longer for basking and frilled sharks, though data is sparse.
2 years. Incredible diversity in how they bring young into the world.
From eggs to basically a placental connection. It's amazing.
All right, behavior. The image is the solitary hunter, but that's not the whole story.
Far from it. Yes, some are solitary, but many are much more social, sedentary, live near the bottom. Growing evidence suggests distinct personalities even.
Personalities in sharks.
Seems so. Even solitary ones often gather for breeding or at rich feeding spots. This can lead to long migrations, thousands of miles sometimes. Their migration patterns can be incredibly complex, maybe even more so than birds, traversing whole ocean basins. They're not just wandering.
Purposeful movements. Tell me more about the social side.
Some are highly social, form large schools. Scalloped hammerheads congregate in groups of over 100 around seamounts, islands.
Wow.
And you see cross-species hierarchies. Oceanic whitetips tend to dominate silky sharks of similar size when feeding. And if you get too close, some sharks show threat displays, exaggerated swimming movements. Intensity varies, like underwater body language.
Underwater etiquette. Fascinating.
Yeah.
What about speed? We mentioned the Mako is fast. What's typical cruising speed?
Generally, they cruise around 8 kilometers per hour, maybe 5 miles per hour. But when hunting or attacking, they can burst much faster. Average shark maybe 19 kph, 12 mile per hour.
And the Mako.
Mako's the champ. Bursts up to 50 kph, that's 31 mile per hour, one of the fastest fish out there. Great whites also have impressive bursts. This faster speed might be linked to being warm-blooded, homeothermic.
Right, the written Mirabile.
Exactly. Some cover huge distances daily, 70, 80 kilometers, built for movement.
Impressive. Now, intelligence. Always debated. How do they compare?
Interestingly, their brain-to-body mass ratios are comparable to some mammals and birds. Suggests more cognitive complexity than just instinct.
Really?
Yeah. We see observations in the wild of what looks like curiosity, maybe even play-like behavior. Juvenile lemon sharks have shown observational learning when checking out new objects, so they seem capable of learning and exploring, not just reacting.
Playful sharks. Definitely breaks the stereotype. What about sleep? Do they just keep swimming forever?
How they sleep is interesting. Depends on how they breathe. Sharks that can pump water over their gills using spiracles can rest on the bottom, but their eyes might stay open, even track divers. So not true sleep like ours.
Okay. What about the ones that have to swim constantly?
They engage in sleep swimming, essentially unconscious movement. Experiments on spiny dogfish showed the spinal cord, not the brain, coordinates the swimming so they can keep moving while asleep.
Autopilot.
Basically. Might be true for larger species, too. There was even footage in 2016 of what looked like a great white sleep swimming, first time it was captured.
Unconscious swimming, coordinated by the spine. Amazing. Okay, let's pivot to ecology. Their role. What do they eat? Where do they live?
Ecologically, incredibly diverse. Most are carnivores, but feeding strategies vary massively. You've got the filter feeders, basking, whale, megamouth
Yeah.
sharks, specialized gill rakers to sieve plankton.
Right.
Then unique parasites like the cookie cutter shark takes neat circular bites out of bigger animals.
Ouch.
Ambush predators like angel sharks, wobbegongs, camouflage, lion weights, suck prey in. Benthic sharks eating crustaceans, crushing them with flat teeth. Others eat squid, fish swallowing whole or biting chunks. Thresher sharks use their tails to stun fish. Saw sharks stir up prey or slash with their rostra.
So many strategies.
And the bonnethead shark, the only known omnivore, eats a lot of seagrass and can actually digest it. Plus, cooperative hunting in some species, like white-tip reef sharks herding prey. It's a real tapestry of feeding style.
A tapestry indeed. And habitats. Found everywhere.
Pretty much all seas. Generally not freshwater, but exceptions exist. Bull shark, river varks, Ganges shark can tolerate or live exclusively in freshwater.
How deep do they go?
Coming down to 2,000 meters, that's about 6,600 feet. Some live even deeper, though rare below 3,000 meters, around 10,000 feet. Deepest confirmed sighting. A Portuguese dogfish at 3,700 meters, over 12,000 feet down.
From sunlit shallows to the crushing deep, they've found a niche everywhere.
They really have.
Okay, let's talk humans and sharks. The relationship, often seen as pure danger. What's the reality of attacks?
The reality is very different from the perception. The International Shark Attack File data from 2001-2006 showed an average of only 4.3 fatal, unprovoked attacks worldwide per year.
Only 4 or 5 a year globally.
On average, yes. Out of over 470 species, only a tiny handful are consistently implicated. Great white, oceanic white-tip, tiger, bull sharks, these are large predators. Yes, attacks happen, but they're isolated incidents. You're far more likely to be hit by lightning.
So the danger is hugely exaggerated. Fueled by media, fiction.
Exactly. Isolated events like the 1916 Jersey Shore attacks and movies like Jaws created widespread fear. Interestingly, Peter Benchley, who wrote Jaws, and Spielberg, the director, later regretted that man-eating monster image they helped create.
That's good to hear.
Research suggests attacks are often mistaken identity, confusing swimmers or surfers with seals, their usual prey. Drone footage even shows juvenile sharks swimming near people peacefully. Coexistence seems possible. Understanding behavior is key.
A much more reassuring picture. What about keeping them in captivity? Used to be hard, right?
Historically, very challenging. Only some bottom dwellers like horn sharks, cat sharks survived long, led to the belief they were just too difficult. But with better knowledge, safer transport, more species, even large pelagic ones live much longer in aquariums now.
Like the great white at Monterey Bay.
Exactly. That was a milestone in 2004, kept for 198 days, then released. But most species are just not suitable for home aquariums, need huge space, massive investment. Unfortunately, some dealers sell juveniles that quickly outgrow tanks.
Leading owners to release them, not good.
Generally detrimental, yeah.
Yeah.
Best to admire them in the wild or reputable public aquariums.
Good advice. What about their cultural role, beyond being feared?
Rich and varied. In Hawaiian mythology, sharks are prominent. Stories of shark men, shark gods like Kamahali, a revered ancestor.
Interesting.
In American Samoa, there's Turtle and Shark Point, central to a legend. Villagers still perform a ritual song to summon them. Contrast that with the Western view, largely fear-based, amplified by pop culture, often just generic ocean threats.
And there are misconceptions, too.
Definitely. They are not immune to disease or cancer cases exist, and the idea that shark cartilage cures cancer or arthritis, no scientific basis whatsoever. Our cultural understanding is as varied as their biology.
Fascinating how perception differs from reality. Now, the critical issue. Threats they face. Populations are in trouble.
Sadly, yes, a major concern. Fisheries are a huge threat. Estimated 100 million sharks killed by humans annually, mostly commercial and recreational fishing.
100 million a year.
That was the estimate around 2008. And since 1970, oceanic shark and ray populations have plummeted, down by 71%, primarily overfishing and the horrific practice of shark finning.
Yeah, tell us about finning.
It's estimated over 1.4 million metric tons of fins are traded yearly. Translates to roughly 100 million sharks. They're caught, fins sliced off, often while alive, and the body dumped back in the ocean to die.
It's just unbelievably cruel and wasteful.
It is. Fins are valuable, driven by demand for shark fin soup, a status symbol in some places, despite no proven health benefits and potential neurotoxins like BMAA. Laws and bans are increasing, but enforcement is often lacking, ecologically damaging, ethically questionable.
Beyond finning, what else contributes to their decline?
Their biology makes them vulnerable, mature late, few offspring. Fishing them before they reproduce hits populations hard. Capture often causes premature birth or abortion, too.
Compounding the problem.
Exactly. Plus, most shark fisheries are poorly monitored, poorly managed, led to huge stock declines, over 90% for some species. The IUCN estimates a quarter of all known shark and ray species are threatened with extinction. It's a perfect storm.
A bleak picture. What about shark culling? Does that help protect people? What's the impact?
Culling programs deliberately killing sharks with drumlines, nets are highly controversial. Their effectiveness in reducing attacks is debated. Programs in Australia, South Africa kill lots of sharks, but also tons of bycatch, dolphins, turtles, other endangered species.
So unintended consequences.
Big time. Many scientists call them ineffective, harmful to ecosystems, a knee-jerk reaction, not science-based. Some see it as revenge, not improving safety. Complex issue, no easy answers.
Sounds like a blunt instrument causing collateral damage. Any other major threats?
Yes. Habitat alteration, damage from coastal development, pollution, fisheries impacting the seabed and their prey. The documentary Shark Water really highlighted these threats, pushing them towards extinction. Basically, human impact on the ocean affects sharks.
A multitude of pressures. Is there any hope? What conservation efforts are happening?
Fortunately, yes, efforts are growing. South Africa first protected great whites in '91. The U.S. has acts against finning. The EU has a ban.
Good steps.
The IUCN Red List identifies species at risk. CITES lists some endangered sharks like hammerheads, oceanic whitetips, poor beagles to regulate trade.
Controlling the trade?
Yeah. Groups like Greenpeace, Shark Trust advocate for limits. Seafood Watch advises consumers. There's the Convention on Migratory Species focusing on migratory sharks. Several U.S. states ban the fin trade. Shark sanctuaries are being established where fishing is banned.
Sanctuaries sound promising.
They can be. Scientists use DNA analysis now to trace fin origins, fight illegal trade. Global surveys show reef sharks are depleted, but also that conservation measures can work. Despite the alarming declines, the growing awareness and action offer a glimmer of hope. It's a global effort, slowly gaining ground.
Encouraging to hear, even with the huge challenges.
Yeah.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways?
Well, just the incredible diversity, right? Over 500 species, each uniquely adapted, their ancient lineage, hundreds of millions of years, and the complexity of their lives, sophisticated senses, varied reproduction, vital ecological roles as apex predators maintaining healthy oceans.
And crucial to remember, they aren't those one-dimensional monsters. They're vital components playing roles we're still fully understanding.
Precisely. Their decline has huge consequences for ocean health, impacting fish populations, the whole balance. The threats from human activity, especially overfishing and finning, need urgent attention if we want to avoid losing them forever.
So as our final thought for you, the listener, let's reflect on the efforts to protect these magnificent, often misunderstood creatures. We really have a responsibility to ensure their survival. Maybe this deep dive sparks some curiosity to learn more about shark biology, conservation.
Hope so.
I certainly encourage you to explore further. Think about how our choices might impact these ancient, vital inhabitants of our planet. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.